the Washington Commanders, in a terse release, announced that they had released Carson Wentz, which really is no surprise. They basically have been telling people that Sam Howell, their draft choice from last year, the quarterback, was going to be the incumbent entering training camp, and that's certainly how new offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy has been progressing as he begins his new job in Washington. But to me, Miles, I want to discuss Carson Wentz for a moment. And I want to basically talk about how, in my opinion, this is one of the great ruined careers in recent NFL history. So let's just go back. Every year when I go to the scouting combine, I attempt to do a column coming out of the combine on either, the top pick in the draft or a player who is fascinating to me. And so in 2016, I remember there was a lot of buzz at the scouting combine about this fairly unknown quarterback because he played in Division I AA. The whatever that used to be called 1AA, whatever it is now, FCS, FBS, I forget what all those things are called. But so he went to North Dakota State, and I remember I staked him out because I don't think he had to do his 15-minute media period, and I don't think he wanted to do anything else. But I staked him out, and finally found him just before he was going to leave Indianapolis. And I got, 10 to 15 minutes with him. He had his bag packed. He was ready to go into the van to the airport. And I will just never forget my conversation with him, because one of the most interesting things in that conversation was I asked him about something that I had read. And I said, Carson, is it true that, I sound like Perry Mason or Columbo here, Carson Wentz, is it true? I said, is it true that in your 16 years of education, grades 1 through 12 in North Dakota, growing up in North Dakota, and then 4 years at North Dakota State, that you never got a grade below an A? And he was pretty sheepish about it, but he said, yes, I never got a B in my life. And so this guy was in so many ways precocious. And so obviously the Philadelphia Eagles traded a boatload of stuff to move up to get him in the draft, picked him. And we all recall in 2017, Carson Wentz was 11-2 in the Eagles' first 13 games. But in that 13th game, he suffered a torn ACL on a scramble toward the end zone, I think at the LA Coliseum.
Sure was.
If I'm not mistaken.
Yep, I was at that game. Yeah.
Okay. And so he's hurt. He's out for the year. Nick Foles comes in, and now there's a statue of Nick Foles outside of Lincoln Financial Field. And I'm going to tell you a couple of things that over the last 2 or 3 years that I've learned. I've learned, number one, that Carson Wentz quite literally thinks that that should be a statue of him. That if he had remained healthy that year, that he was going to be the one to lead the Philadelphia Eagles to the promised land. He would be the guy who would be forever immortalized in Philadelphia. But instead, it was just this happenstance guy, Nick Foles, who stepped in and played fantastic and scored 41 points on the great Belichick in the Super Bowl and had the great shootout win against Tom Brady. So all of that played on Carson Wentz. And as time went on in Philadelphia, he essentially let everything get to him. He let the fact that he got hurt that year and had his Super Bowl chance taken away from him. He didn't play. He played well the next year. He didn't play great, but he played well the next year. and he played well the following year. But then in 2020, when the Philadelphia Eagles decided that they were going to draft Jalen Hurts in the second round, that really messed with his head. And they didn't draft Jalen Hurts to take over for Carson Wentz, even though that's what happened. They drafted him for low-cost backup, quality backup insurance. And yet that's the thing that ruined him. And now the last 3 years, 2020 in Philadelphia, crummy year. 2021 in Indianapolis, good numbers in Indianapolis, but failed at the biggest times down the stretch in Indianapolis. And the Colts didn't make the playoffs. And then obviously he was a disaster in Washington last year. Myles, it's almost like we're seeing a car crash before our very eyes. And now at age 30, Carson Wentz, if he chooses to continue to play, and I'm sure he will, he says he loves football, will be on his fourth team in 4 years this year. And I would think absolutely unequivocally only as a backup quarterback.
Oh, yeah, Peter. I mean, I don't think that there's any chance that anybody would even sign him to compete for a starting role. I mean, after what we've seen over the last few years, I don't know that there's any reason to think that he is a starting caliber quarterback in the NFL. And he did look like an MVP in the 2017 season. And I can see where it would be hard to get over that. But at the same time, if you're a competitor, you have to, and I looked at that 2020 season that he had with the Eagles, and I remember he was tied for the league lead in number of times he was sacked, and he didn't even play in the last few weeks of the season, which tells you just how bad his pocket presence was, right? I mean, sacks are a lot of times, we can say that they're on the offensive line, but many times they're also on the quarterback. And that has been part of what's been his problem, at least since 2020. So, you look at what his career has come into now. And, a couple years ago, it looked like maybe one or both of Jared Goff and Carson Wentz, the top two picks of the 2016 draft, would not be starters for much longer, right? I mean, especially after 2020, look what happened with the Rams there. But now, I mean, Jared Goff looks like he's probably the answer with Detroit. I mean, we're not really talking about them as being a part of this quarterback conversation at all. And now you look at Carson Wentz, and man, it's been the last 3 years, it's just gone down, down, down. And it's going to be interesting to see what he decides to do next, Peter, with whatever he wants his career to be.
Yeah, what I would say right now is I think obviously he's blown away right now. He has to be blown away with exactly what has happened to him in his career. But I think what he needs to do, late in his career in Philadelphia, he basically stopped taking coaching from Doug Peterson. And I think he has to go somewhere, honestly. I think he has to go somewhere that has a really good head coach. And I mean, I'll give you a place that if I were him, I don't even know if they'd have any interest. But in my opinion, if I were him, I'd want to go to Denver. And I'd basically have Sean Payton day one say, absolutely unequivocally, Russell Wilson is our quarterback. We're not going to have a competition for it. But we think that there could be some great upside. And look, best thing that could happen to them is sign Carson Wentz to a 2-year deal, and he plays a little bit this year when he has to, and they make his career a reclamation project, and they trade him for a middle round draft pick, after the season. But anyway, he needs to go somewhere. Forget about playing football. He needs to go somewhere and learn the position all over again and really have greatness reinforced to him.
Yeah, and I think Denver could be a good place for that. And I mean, the other part of that scenario is if Russell Wilson doesn't end up being better under Sean Payton,
right,
and then Carson Wentz comes in there and, who knows, maybe he does light it up. He's with a new head coach, and that head coach and the quarterback, they get it right for whatever reason. That could be a solution in Denver potentially. So, I mean, I think that would make sense as a spot. Maybe he would want to go to Kansas City, be a backup to Patrick Mahomes, because
there's another good spot,
right? I mean, that's another place where we know that you're going to learn quarterbacking. You're going to have Andy Reid. You have Matt Nagy, who has done a good job with Patrick Mahomes historically. So that could be another interesting spot there where, if you're Kansas City, you still want a good veteran backup that can come in and you can trust. Look what Chad Henne did in that playoff game against the Jacksonville Jaguars to keep that team afloat while Patrick Mahomes was getting his ankle looked at. So, I mean, that's another team that puts a premium on that position. And so who knows, maybe he's a fit there.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.